In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can use your NPCs as contacts to create a more rich world in your solo RPG. Now, this video is a little bit different than the one I did a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago, I talked about how you can use your relationship tracker to help identify whether your NPCs like your character or don't like your character, and that allows you to mechanically within the game identify how your NPCs react to your character actions, or alternatively, how your NPCs react to things that are happening in the world, which would then allow your character to react to your NPC's reaction. That is covered in the other video. In this video, I'm talking about how you can use your NPCs as contacts to create a more rich game world experience, which I think and find is particularly helpful when you're playing a solo RPG. Now we're going to start with Traveler. Traveler RPG is a wonderful science fiction RPG, and the Traveler RPG has contacts in Traveler. Generally speaking, a contact is somebody, an NPC that your character meets in Traveler, and they, generally speaking, have a good or service that they can offer your character. They could be a trader, they could be a collector of a very specific or niche type of object, or they could be like a repair person who you trust implicitly and will always give you a good deal and sometimes even do something for a favor or just because they have a good relationship with your character. Maybe your character helped them out of a jam that one time, and your repair person now is basically giving you free repairs. That's the type of thing that a contact can do in Traveler. Now, we can apply that same idea to other RPGs that you play solo, and it can be very, very beneficial to helping your character out and creating a really rich game world experience. Let's look at Dungeons & Dragons next. Dungeons & Dragons, D&D, it does not really have a contact system within the rules. There are maybe hirelings or followers, especially if you go back to previous editions, but there's not the idea of a contact within the rules. So if we use this idea of a contact in Dungeons & Dragons, it might look something like this. Maybe your character is a fighter, a big, beefy, burly fighter we'll call Braun. And Braun is going out to the dungeon to do some looting, right? So Braun fights his way into the dungeon, gets a small bag of loot, and then finally he meets a monster that he just can't face, gets his butt kicked, and has to skedaddle out of the dungeon and get back to town. When he gets back to town, there is an inn, right? But all the villagers in the town see him carrying this big bag of loot, and they see that Braun is beat to crap. He does not have a lot of health left, and it's obvious. All it takes is for one villager, one bonehead, to walk into Braun's room when he's sleeping, bop him on the head with a club, steal his loot, and get out of town, and Braun's in trouble, right? So Braun doesn't want to stay at the inn. Boy, wouldn't it be nice if Braun had a contact at the local church? Because guess what the local church has? The local church has places that Braun could potentially stay, people that won't steal his stuff, hopefully, and most importantly, clerics who have healing spells. So if Braun had previously had a contact where he could have gone and he could have, made a deal or gotten to know someone, he could now have a place that he goes when he's in trouble. Maybe he makes a small or large donation to the church, but in return he gets healing. He gets a quiet room for a few hours so he can kind of gather his things up. And then he gets to stride into the inn looking beefy instead of looking beat up, and nobody's touching Braun's stuff when he's looking beefy. Alternatively, maybe Braun is exploring that dungeon and he gets to a big door. It's reinforced, it's sealed, and it's locked, and it's possibly trapped. Braun doesn't know if it's trapped because he doesn't have those skills. But maybe Braun has a contact in the local Thieves Guild, and from there, he can talk to the local Thieves Guild, set up a deal where they give him not a pickpocketer, someone who's like a locksmith, someone who can pick locks, and in return, Braun fences his stuff over to the Thieves Guild. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about creating contacts, using contacts as NPCs. It's a more transactional type relationship than what I was talking about in the other video, but it can be really, really helpful and really, really fulfilling in a solo RPG because it adds a lot to the story, but it also gives your character access to stuff they wouldn't otherwise have had. And in an RPG like Dungeons & Dragons that generally relies on a party that can cover 4-ish archetypes of characters, that can be really helpful when you have one character who's covering one archetype when the game is designed for 4. It also can include a lot of really fun story elements that you can add into. Maybe the next time Braun goes into the dungeon, he doesn't get any loot, but he does get his butt kicked right away. He has to go back to that same church to get healed, but this time he doesn't have money for a donation. So what does he do? He offers a favor to the church in return for healing. All right, maybe when Braun gets his loot, the next time he gets his loot, he sends it over to the Thieves Guild, and they start fencing his stuff so that he doesn't have to worry about selling illegally gotten gains or something like that. Maybe the favor from the church has Braun go do something that the Thieves Guild was like, wait a minute, we needed that. Why did you destroy that? And all of a sudden, the Thieves Guild's like, you know what? We're not going to pay you back for the stuff we're fencing. So now all of a sudden, Braun is fulfilled his favor with the church, but now no longer has a contact at the Thieves Guild, and they've stolen all his stuff. So now he doesn't even have any more money to donate to the church anyways. So you can see how the idea of adding contacts can not only give your character opportunities to goods or services or assets that they wouldn't otherwise have, but they can add really cool story elements in ways that you might not otherwise get if you're not looking at NPCs through this type of lens. When I use characters, NPCs as contacts within solo RPGs, I like to get pretty specific. I think it's very, very fun for my character, whether it's in like Forbidden Lands, wandering around different villages, or Traveler, wandering around all these different worlds, to create a list of NPCs that, number one, they not only have relationships with, like I discussed in the other video, but number two, they have a transactional relationship of some kind. Maybe it's Forbidden Lands, and Birdie, the turnip farmer, has the best knowledge of the history and lore in the region. She knows every myth, she knows every legend, she knows the history of the region that isn't even covered in the few remaining history books within the village. That's something that can be really, really fun that you can add to your gameplay. And now, if you have a question about the history of the area or a legend or a myth, you can go to Birdie and you can get the answer that you're looking for because you have a good relationship with Birdie. They're a turnip farmer. They just want to talk to someone and pass their knowledge on to someone, and you get to learn more about the world. Maybe you're talking to Jacques, and your Far Trader space merchant is always looking for ill-gotten goods, and Jacques is a severe connoisseur of wine, and Jacques really, really likes diving into different types of wine. And the best thing about Jacques is he's willing to pay good money for rare wines, and he doesn't ask questions. So it's a win-win. Jacques gets the wine he wants to add to his collection so he can brag to all his rich friends about all this wine he gets, and your character, the merchant, gets to take all of his ill-gotten wine and sell it to Jacques with no questions asked and no worries about it being reported to the authorities. This can be a really, really fun way, I think, to add some flavor, add some depth and richness to your solo world, because the NPCs start meaning something, and they mean something to your character from a relationship perspective, but also from a mechanical and transactional perspective. And there's a really fun moment when you're playing a game and the game says like, oh yeah, and in the corner of the room next to the treasure chest which has all the golden jewels that you can use to buy things at the store or in the village, is a small bronze sculpture of an ancient god. Normally that's kind of like window dressing, and you're like, well, what do I do with this? But when you have an NPC who collects ancient artifacts and has an interest in religious deities, all of a sudden this bronze sculpture is really, really exciting because you know exactly what to do with it. You know exactly who to go to sell it to or give it to. And that is a really, really fun moment when the things that you've created combine and connect with the things that the designer of the game created. And when those two things happen, it creates really, really fun story moments. So, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this idea, using NPCs as contacts, looking at NPCs through a transactional lens, understanding what type of good or service or asset they might provide your character and what your character might provide them. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.